Does the president agree that this is a women's rights issue? Does he think it's fair for girls to have to compete against biological males?
It's a complicated issue. It is truly a complicated issue with a wide range of views, There is no yes or no answer to this. It is complicated.
Do you believe that Leah Thomas had an advantage in swimming because she was a biological male who transitioned, who spent 3 years swimming for the men's team in the senior year of college to compete in the women's division? They think that's okay? This is definitely not okay. You work all your life training as a swimmer, competing against biological girls, and you wind up your senior in college competing with somebody who 3 years swam as a guy, and you lose. Ms. Robinson, do 80% of Americans support biological males competing in women's athletics?
I can say more than 70% of Americans believe that the rash of attacks on trans sports is the wrong political priority.
Question. Do 80% of Americans support biological males participating in female sports?
I mean, I can't verify that, but what I can say
I can
is that
tell you it's not even close.
We mentioned this issue being politicized. This is not politics for me. This is a real life issue, and I want to put it on record. I don't believe trans athletes should be banned from sports. That's the rhetoric that's being pushed from the opposition. Anti-trans bill bans trans athletes. Trans athletes should not be banned from playing sports. Of course not. I just want everyone to compete where it's fair and where it's safe, and I don't understand how that's overly controversial. But yes, especially at that NCAA championships, every single girl, at least on my team, being a team captain, I had these conversations with my team, and there was 40 girls on my team. We all felt the same way. I've had the conversations. We all felt uncomfortable in that locker room.
Thank you.
That's offensive. Watch the man do it.
You say to people who say, you are hurting me. You are hurting people I care about. You are hurting my community. You are causing pain.
I don't want to be considered a bigot or a transphobe or all of those labels. There's no hate in my heart. But me, myself, personally, I don't actually think this person is a woman. I don't actually think this person is a female. Therefore, when I say she, I feel like I'm going against my moral compass. The beauty of sports lies in a sense of fairness. Thomas took a spot from a woman who deserved that roster spot. Thomas could have placed dead last, and it would still be just as unfair because we were robbed of opportunities. And that's what fairness means. It's about an equal playing field, and we most certainly did not have that.
Action do you have toward other folks who feel that you shouldn't be able to compete?
I disagree. Trans women competing in women's sports does not threaten women's sports as a whole. Trans women are a very small minority of all athletes, and we haven't seen any massive wave of trans women dominating. Trans women are women, and so it's still a woman who is getting that scholarship or that opportunity. It's a part of athletics where people are competing against one another.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is
My
different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do believe that women's sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would
determine
like
that
to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world. in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100 meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men. If the radical Democrat agenda to destroy girls' sports and women's sports succeeds, little girls will not have a chance to compete. So I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record. What happened on March 17th, 2022?
That's when Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle and again resulted in a tie.
And so you tied. What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, therefore we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this and I say, why? And at first I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled on his words. He didn't know how to answer this. And at first he's, well, we're just doing this in chronological order. To which I further pressed and I said, okay, well, what are you being chronological about? Because we tied. And if we're doing this off alphabetical order, G comes before T. So what are you being chronological about? To which this wasn't a script they had prepared for him. And he actually appreciated his honesty. He did say, we have to give the trophy for Leah because Leah has to have it for pictures. They've made that clear. Leah has to have the trophy for pictures. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give yours back. You have to go home empty-handed. Leah Thomas takes the trophy home. End of story.
Now, let me ask you, as someone who's competed at the elite level, in your experience, is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learned this at a very young age, watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make will overcome that male advantage, especially in sports like swimming where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing. But when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
At the core of the issue, the science. What does science tell us about the differences between male and female athletes? In virtually every sport in which performance can be quantified, by the clock, the tape measure, or by weight, the most accomplished men outperform the most accomplished women. Why? It can be summed up, for the most part, in one word: testosterone.
Little boys will generally outperform little girls in sports, but it's not by a wide margin. That all changes once boys hit puberty.
Joanna Harper is a researcher at Loughborough University in England. She studies transgender athletes and has advised organizations such as the International Olympic Committee.
At that point, testosterone increases enormously.
Testosterone is a hormone present in both males and females, but at vastly different levels.
This initiates some major changes in terms of size, strength, bone structure, hemoglobin levels, which are very important for endurance.
Testosterone increases protein synthesis, it increases growth of bones, it increases a lot of factors underpinning these changes in stature, lean body mass, and differences between the sexes in general.
Tommy Lundberg is a physiologist at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden and the author and co-author of some of the most influential studies on gender in sports.
Men have on average 40 to 45% more lean body mass or muscle mass than women have. And the differences in muscle strength are even more pronounced
Even at the lowest end of the range in males, cisgender men, that is, those whose gender identity matches their sex at birth, still produce more than 4 times as much testosterone as cisgender women at the highest end of the female range.
So really, testosterone drives these sex differences and is then a really good marker for whether you have undergone and benefited from the male puberty versus if you have not.
One of the key issues concerning transgender women athletes centers on those physical benefits that accrue as a result of undergoing male puberty, also known as testosterone-driven puberty. To compete in women's sports, transgender women are typically mandated to undergo hormone replacement therapy to reduce testosterone for at least 1 to 2 years.
We see in essentially all studies published on transgender women undergoing controlled therapy that they do reach female levels around 1 to 2 nanomoles per liter.
There is a reduction in muscle mass, muscle strength, muscle cross-section area.
But experts such as Harper, who is transgender, say that testosterone levels are only part of the equation when it comes to mitigating the effects of male puberty.
It's unlikely that trans women will lose enough strength to get down to typical female values.
When you later change or drastically reduce testosterone levels as an adult male, for example, we don't tend to see these large changes. So you can't really undo the male development during puberty.
Breaking news! There is a new Canadian national record holder in women's powerlifting. The only problem is, it wasn't set by a woman. Trans-identified Anne Andres competed at the 2023 Western Canadian Championships yesterday. According to results, Andres' total powerlifting score was over 210 pounds more than the top-performing female in the same class. Not only is this a Canadian national record, sources say that this is an unofficial world record for the class that Andres competed in. And as if his domination competing against the women wasn't enough, watch as he mocks female powerlifters.
Why is women's bench so bad? I mean, not compared to me. We all know that I'm a tranny freak, so that doesn't count. I know we're not talking about Mackenzie Lee. She's got little T-Rex arms and she's like 400 pounds of chest muscle, apparently. I mean, standard bench in powerlifting competition for women, I literally don't understand why it's so bad.
Let's rephrase that. Women's bench might be bad to you because you are a male who's gone through male puberty with a male amount of testosterone. Being a woman or a female athlete doesn't mean we're inferior or not capable of accomplishing incredible things, but it means we're different to men. And that's exactly why the women's sporting category was ever even created. And we deserve to be recognized and celebrated based off of those physical ceilings and our own uniqueness.
So this question of, do trans women have an advantage over cis women? We don't know. In fact, there's basically no published research on this question. However, there's good reason to think that there isn't, but I think it's irrelevant because we allow all kinds of competitive advantages within women's sport.
Do you not think that we're limiting ourselves by saying men's sports, women's sports, when we now know that there's so many more genders?
So I'm really going to dissatisfy you right now.
Well, you don't know what I'm looking for, though, so you can't.
I do. I know you're looking for something other than what I'm going to say, and that is a very important question and a very difficult question, but it's a separate question. The question we're talking about is, given how sport is currently structured, should we include trans women and intersex women in women's sport? And my answer to that is a clear yes. If you want to say, should we revisit how we structure all of sport? I would say, yeah, we should do that. But if your only reason for doing that is because you can't just accept trans women or women, that's a problem I got with you.
I don't think somebody who is a woman who's worked really hard for her achievements should be forced to compete against a biological man in a swim competition. I don't think that somebody who's a woman that respects her bodily autonomy and dignity should be forced to change clothes in a locker room with a man. That's not freedom, that's oppression. And so I believe that we live in a country where free adults should be free to dress how they want, behave how they want, and that's fine. But you don't become oppressive by foisting that on others. And that especially includes kids, because kids aren't the same as adults. And so I think adults are free to make whatever choices they want, but do not foist that ideology onto children before children are in a position as adults to make decisions for themselves. And so I think a lot of the frustration in the country, and if I'm being really honest, that I also share, comes from that new culture of oppression where saying those things can actually get somebody punished.